I never walked into marriage thinking passion would stay effortless forever. I knew routines replace novelty, that workdays bleed into each other, that life dulls edges if you let it. What I didn't expect was punishment disguised as principle. I'm Everett Hale. I'm 43. I was married to Marlo for 14 years, and for most of that time, I believed we were a team. We weren't flashy. We were steady. I worked logistics management, paid the mortgage on time, fixed what broke, showed up when it mattered. Marlo used to say that stability was my love language. I thought that was enough. The shift didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It crept in quietly. Less eye contact. Shorter replies. She started treating conversations like obligations. I'd talk, she'd nod, already halfway elsewhere. Nights that once ended together ended separately. Her scrolling beside me, screen glowing brighter than the space between us. I told myself it was stress. She worked in nonprofit fundraising, long hours, endless deadlines. I picked up more slack without being asked. Cooking, cleaning, errands. I thought effort would reopen whatever had closed. Instead, distance hardened. Touch became rare, then awkward, then avoided. When I tried, she'd stiffen, like I'd crossed a line I wasn't aware existed. I asked once, carefully, if something was wrong. She sighed and said, "Can we not make everything about you?" That was the first time I felt small in my own house. Still, I stayed patient. Men are taught patience is strength. So I waited. One Sunday morning, over cold coffee and untouched toast, she finally said it. Calm, measured, almost rehearsed. "I'm on an intimacy strike." I laughed, thinking it was a joke that didn't land. She didn't smile. "You need to reflect," she continued. "You've been complacent. This is how you learn." There was no anger in her voice, just certainty. Like she was explaining a rule change, not withdrawing something fundamental. I asked how long. She shrugged. "Until I feel respected." I replayed that word for weeks. Respected. I paid the bills, supported her career moves, never cheated, never raised my voice. I asked what exactly she needed. She said, "Figure it out." And that was the game. Silent quizzes, moving goalposts, withholding framed as self-care. I slept beside a woman who had decided absence was instruction. I tried harder, not because I was guilty, but because I wanted peace. Compliments, date nights, notes left on the counter. She accepted them without warmth, like dues paid late. Months passed. The strike didn't end. It evolved. She stopped sitting near me, stopped asking about my day, introduced rules. No touching, no expectations. "Pressure kills desire," she'd say, while applying pressure everywhere else. I felt like a tenant being slowly evicted from his own marriage. Friends noticed. I lied. It's easier than explaining erosion. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was mundane. I came home early one evening and heard her laughing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. A sound I hadn't heard directed at me in a long time. When she noticed me, the laughter cut off instantly. Later, I asked who it was. She said, "A friend." The way she said it closed the door on further questions. That night, I slept on the couch without being asked to. Clarity doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it settles in quietly, like a final decision you've been avoiding. I realized the strike wasn't about teaching me anything. It was about control. About reminding me that affection was conditional, that my access depended on obedience. Love doesn't operate like that. Power does. and I was done negotiating my dignity. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I didn't threaten or plead. I made coffee, packed my lunch, went to work. During my break, I opened our shared calendar and removed myself from everything beyond the week. I opened our finances and separated what was joint from what wasn't. Not to punish, to prepare. That evening, I told her calmly that I'd accepted her terms. That intimacy was off the table indefinitely. So was emotional access. We would now live as roommates until legal steps were taken. She laughed, assuming I was bluffing. I wasn't. Over the following days, I stopped checking in, stopped chasing, stopped explaining myself. I moved my clothes into the spare room. When she asked what I was doing, I said, "Respecting your boundaries." Something shifted then. Confusion flickered across her face. She tried to argue, but arguments require engagement, and I was finished engaging. The strike lost its leverage when I stopped caring about the outcome. A week later, she asked if we could talk. I agreed. She said she felt abandoned. I told her I'd felt that way for a year. She said she never meant for it to go this far. I told her it already had. She asked if we could start over. I asked how. She didn't have an answer, just expectations. I declined. I filed quietly. No spectacle, no accusations, just facts. When the papers arrived, she cried. Not because she loved me, but because the lesson failed. She thought withholding would bend me. She didn't expect me to stand up and walk away intact. I moved into a small place across town. It was sparse, but it was mine. The silence there felt different, honest, restful. I don't hate Marlo. I don't wish her harm. I learned something valuable, though. Love isn't proven through endurance of neglect. Marriage isn't a classroom where one partner assigns suffering as homework. When intimacy becomes a weapon, the relationship is already over. Walking away wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. And that lesson, finally, stuck.